So, the Europe Builds podcast is all about uncovering the untapped knowledge within the European startup ecosystem. And there's no better place to be than the Doers Summit, where for the very first time, founders, investors, and operators are meeting up to turn their ideas into reality.
The timing also couldn't be better. Some European problems may persist, but we're finally seeing winds of change, from the new Commission's competitiveness compass to reducing internal market barriers. There's a lot of room for growth and a lot of room for hope. So for all of this and more, join us for this series of Europe Builds episodes showcasing some of the greatest founders, operators and investors from the Doers Summit.
Jack, it's so nice to have you here, all the way from London.
Yep, great to be here. Thank you.
Lovely. So Jack Thorogood, founder and CEO of Native Teams. We're going to talk a little bit about culture, because what you do is essentially a platform designed to simplify global work for freelancers, remote workers, and global businesses. But you were just telling us about how culture has been like a big success for you, particularly because you operate in the Balkans, where it's not always easy to do that. So, but we're going to start with a more basic question, and one that I'm sure you're tired of answering, because we're in the Doers Summit and we all do networking, which is, who are you and what do you do?
Sure, perfect. And just before I forget to kind of pick you up on this one, I wouldn't say culture has been a big success for us. It's been a challenge for us as well as a success. So it's kind of both of those things going together. In terms of who I am and what I do, Jack Thorogood, CEO and founder of Native Teams. Native Teams is a combination of payment tools and employment options. Initially, we built the business for international remote workers, so that was our background, to make it easier for talent to find opportunities without having to emigrate for those opportunities. In more recent times, we also provide our core work payments backbone for the gig economy sector as well. And actually that does include a bit more local employment. It's not just knowledge sector workers as well. In a summary, however, we really take the hassle out of paying people for the work that they do.
You have been a serial entrepreneur, right?
Yeah, I guess it's a small series. This is my third company.
What have kept you going? It's like you see people do a first one, maybe a second one, but...
To be fair, that's not really a question I've necessarily asked myself. But if I was to ask myself, I guess it'd be, I've asked it in slightly different terms. So I've asked it in terms of, what does a journey for Native Teams look like? And we've had acquisition offers in the past, some of which have been pretty lucrative. But it's really a case of, would I enjoy to do anything else more than I enjoy running Native Teams and working with my colleagues at Native Teams at the moment? And the answer is a categoric no. So I think that's really what keeps me going, Matilda. It's the enjoyment, the satisfaction, and to be frank, the sense of fulfillment and professional satisfaction that comes from waking up every day to kind of to try and fit more pieces of the puzzle together. Every day throws up its challenges, of course it does. The business has grown really fast, and as it's grown fast, there's ever more plates to keep spinning. But I think it's the professional satisfaction that comes from giving one's best to try and do that, to make the best with the hand that one has been dealt, whether that's over the longer term or on each particular day, but also to work with really inspiring and fun people. We might come on to this topic a little bit later, but within Native Teams, we've really tried hard to build a culture where everybody enjoys one another's company. We try and avoid the kind of, we're like a family cliche, but our goal with Native Teams is to have a company where everybody's great friends with one another. And I think to actually go to work every day and to work with people that you'd want to be spending your time with outside of work anyway, that's kind of the best way to be. And I think that has been one of the greatest drivers for keeping us going, for sure.
I want to take a step back. The Doers Summit has this logo, which is this lightning, which you could think of as the spark of the idea, right? There's also the lightning bulb has been used as the spark moment. In your case with Native Teams, what was that spark moment when you were like, this is the idea? And what prompted this sort of inspiration, realization, whatever it was?
Yeah, I'd say there's a couple of sparks, and I don't know if I'll perhaps analogize a bit like a car where you try and turn it over, it doesn't quite spark into ignition. We had a couple of those, and then eventually the engine got going. So the first one was a couple of issues where we had a problem that Native Teams has actually ultimately been the solution for. So I had a colleague who'd worked with me at my previous startup and then joined me. Before Native Teams, I was just building software for other people. So I'd exited startup number one and had a small agency building software for other people. And within that small business, we were about 15 people or so, quite international. I obviously am British, but largely based in North Macedonia. We had Macedonian, Serbians, Slovenian as well, actually working. Then we had clients in Australia, in the UK, and in the States as well. And the first issue where I think the first kind of lightning bolt hit or light bulb went off, whichever, was we had a designer, this guy who'd been with me at the previous startup, and he wanted to get a mortgage. And he couldn't get a mortgage because he didn't have a proper local employment contract. We were paying him well. He was working on exciting projects, but he had to leave the business because we couldn't pay him properly through the local payroll system. So that was kind of, I guess, the first spark. I then had a colleague who needed to get some health cover, but she couldn't get the health cover paid for by the state because she, again, didn't have a proper local employment contract. So that was kind of an even bigger wake-up call. So I thought, right, we need to fix this for ourselves. So we fixed it for ourselves, and then so that meant kind of having the right entities and the right way to pay people in the different currencies in Macedonia, Serbia, Slovenia, even though we were getting paid from the US and Australia at that point in time. I then had a friend who runs a tech company in Ireland and said, hey, Jack, we've got 3 Ruby developers in Belgrade. Could you help us make sure we're paying them properly and employing them properly? So that was a kind of, sure, we fix this problem for ourselves. We'll help you out on this one as well. Then I had a couple of friends of friends that asked similar questions. And I thought, hang on a second. This is what I've been looking for, because I've been looking for the next startup journey. There's building software up for other people is great, and some people really relish it. But I've always been somebody that kind of puts 100% of what I am into every project, and to put that into a project for somebody else and then kind of give them the software and then have to move on to the next one is quite exhausting and doesn't allow you to take a project to its ultimate zenith. So I wanted to get back to really building my own fully fledged business again over a longer period of time. So I've been looking for that for some period, but then to all of a sudden find out, hang on a second, first off, we've got something here that fixes a problem we've had. Secondly, we've got some market validation, if we want to call it that. Other people have got the same problem. But then thirdly, to be frank, I wanted something which was really tangible and meaningful. And whilst I wouldn't say I'm hugely mission driven, although what we do for sure, I think, is a societal benefit. It avoids the brain drain of people moving from in many cases, a poorer country to a richer country to find better jobs. I wanted something tangible. My previous startup was a video payments technology business where we provided the middleware to allow a publisher to charge for access to video content. And that was fine. It was actually the best of breed in its particular space. But there's a real sense of kind of meaningfulness to be helping people work on better opportunities, to get paid more for the time that they're spending at work, compared to charging somebody $10 to watch a wrestling match or whatever. So I just wanted something which was a bit more meaningful like that.
Yeah.
And I guess final point, and sorry, this is a longer answer, it's probably the most scalable opportunity I could be working on as well. So we're looking to fix work payments as a whole to be the best way to get paid for the work that people do. And that is kind of, there's not a bigger opportunity than that. Anybody that's in work over time is a potential customer of ours. Now, we're not trying to boil an ocean. We need to do it a step at a time, but that's where we're trying to take the business. So it's something which will really, I think, be a challenge for the long term as well.
And you decided to enter a space that there's a lot of competition, especially coming from the US. Like a lot of us know, like remote.com has raised hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, it's a bold move, right?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, that's a great question. I've never been somebody to really kind of worry about that side of things too much. I've always been... I'll come back to the kind of competitive landscape in just a little bit, but I've always been a kind of a row your own race kind of a guy. And if I feel that we can build the best business that we can possibly build here, we don't worry too much about the competition. We just want to kind of be the best that we particularly can be. We've always addressed it. So when I come back to the competitive landscape, first off, I'd say we sit between 2 fairly distinct groups. So for sure, there's the EOR type platforms on the one hand, but then actually there's the more generous payments platforms on the other, and we kind of sit between the two. So Native Teams looks like a multi-currency wallet, so it looks like a Wise or a Revolut or something like that, but we facilitate payouts through the payroll system, so that allows us to compete with a Deal or a Remote or somebody of that nature. We've always come at it from an employee-first perspective, so that's kind of wildly different from the competitors. Our first users were freelancers based in North Macedonia, trying to work on exciting projects outside of North Macedonia, and that's not a market that a Remote or a Deal or anybody really touch either they didn't touch it then, they don't touch it now. And finally, our longer term goal is to really be the best way for anybody to get paid for the work that they do, not just international remote workers. So if I look at a big part of our growth ambitions for the course of 2025, is to do a lot more with gig sector workers, even Uber drivers, Bolt drivers, Wolt delivery drivers and bike riders and all the rest of it. Again, not a space that a remote or a deal or anybody touches whatsoever, but the platform we've built out to serve our original core user base of those kind of freelancers working as independent people is very well suited for that kind of opportunity as well. So our goal is to go totally mainstream, to be the best way for anybody to get paid for the work that they do. We've not looked out to kind of build a better or different remote or deal.
Yeah. A quick question: was the pandemic instrumental in sort of creating some first demand, especially with digital nomads and whatnot? I mean, lots of demand for native teams, I'm sure, would be coming from Greece. We do have a lot of what you described happens in North Macedonia as well. So I wonder if that was instrumental in sort of generating the need that you identified.
I think the pandemic certainly put the wind at our back, for sure. It was kind of the proverbial rising tides that raises all boats, because it hastened that move to remote working. And whilst I mention, our goal is to be the best way for anybody to get paid for the work that they do, we have to start somewhere. And we're starting with international remote work. That's where there's a load of complexity that we can really kind of bring great solutions to our customers. And that move to remote work for sure was hastened by the pandemic. That's when companies that otherwise were dead against remote work thought, well, hang on a second, nobody can come into the office anyway. So rather than just kind of look to hire in the city where we're based, we should look to hire way more broadly than that. So definitely hastened that trend, which has for sure helped us on that side of things. I guess it was a bit of a kind of, it was a challenging time for sure. The pandemic led to a lot more uncertainty in many different areas, but sometimes that's kind of the best time to start a business anyway, I would say.
I'm very curious about the company's culture because, like we were discussing offline before, and it's something that is very unique in the sense that you're British and your HQ is in Skopje. Can you kind of elaborate about how you overcame like the hurdles and the challenges of this multi-culture company?
Sure.
Into a single one.
Yeah. So we look to overcome those challenges every single day. We kind of keep working hard at the culture. It's not something you can kind of just come up with a recipe at the beginning and then think, well, that's how it's going to work out. We really do and very intentionally work at developing a great culture within the business. I think like I mentioned, perhaps just before we started, our goal with native teams is to really make sure that everybody is friends with one another. And that process starts with the hiring process. So I'm lucky enough, our hiring manager has been working with me for, I think it's 9 years in February, so kind of about now. And some period of time. She was with me before Native Teams. And she's also the best friends with my co-founder as well. They actually both started working with me nine years ago. And she knows intrinsically what by we, I mean me and my co-founder look for in people, and also what the company really looks for in people and the kind of people that the company really benefits from hiring. And this is us benefiting from hiring the right people rather than those people benefiting from joining native teams. That's the way we look at it. So making sure we make the right hires from the get-go is really critical. That's kind of one thing you can't fix. If somebody has the wrong attitude, then there's not much you can kind of do to change that. So hiring the right people at the beginning is really important. I think enough face time and kind of spending the time on the activities that kind of build great relationships, build great friendships is really important. So we've always tried to have a strong social component of native teams. Now, we're a fully distributed company. We have colleagues in, I think it's 30 countries now, something like that. But and as we've grown, those kind of activities have evolved. So in the earliest days of native teams, when we were just 20 people based in the Balkans, even during pandemic times, we'd hire an Airbnb. I think a couple of times we did it in Novi Sad. Every time we did it, I thought everyone's going to, because this was when COVID was way more frightening. I thought everyone's going to get COVID, the company's going to be ruined. But anyway, we did it. We had a great time and it kind of really formed some really strong bonds right from the start. But over time, as the company's grown, we're 300 people or so nowadays, we still try and make sure we build those relationships together in person on a kind of personal level, as well as just people going about their jobs day to day. Because if you purely just focus on the job, essentially the relationship between people and the companies, they get a paycheck once a month and that's pretty much it. But actually, if they feel they're friends with everybody else that works at the company. It's a completely different landscape within which we operate and people collaborate. Just as a couple of kind of tangible examples of that. So every year we're just doing it for the third time now. We hire a villa in Greece. It's going to be a couple of villas now this time. It has been for the last couple of times. It's kind of, to be frank, it's more cost effective. It's easy. The guys from, exactly. Everyone can, half of the team can get in the cars and drive. The other ones, they have to get the visas
and we will say Greece is great for bonding magic. I mean, Okay. We had our own retreat this year in a Greek island.
Spetses.
Where
do you normally go?
Halkidiki is kind of, it's reasonably priced.
They can just drive down.
There's an airport. But we take a couple of villas for a whole month and try and rotate the whole of the company through there. Kind of people that aren't necessarily on the same team will meet with one another. And for sure, we work from that. It's not everybody taking a month or a week or whatever off. They'll work during the day, but working sort of sat opposite the table from somebody else, and then in the evenings obviously make the most out of what Greece and Halkidiki has to offer.
Wow, that's amazing.
I had a question about culture, which I haven't asked any founder yet, and it's going to be a curious one because you want our culture to be something that's sort of centralized and consistent and then passed on. But you're also describing something where people contribute, right? And every new member sort of brings their own contribution to it. So can culture be also sort of a bottoms up? Can you have a bottoms up approach to culture as well, where you sort of evolve it and there's continuous osmosis as you grow and have different teams come in?
Yeah, I think that's a great that's a great question. I haven't really kind of considered it in quite those terms, but absolutely for sure. So every good fit person we have joins us makes us a better company than we were before they joined, for sure. And they contribute to the culture. I mean, our culture has definitely evolved because, we started with 20 people from North Macedonia and Serbia, and I guess me. And now we're 300 people from, for example, we've got 40 people in India, and that's like a wildly different culture. But, they are as much a part of the culture of native teams, even though kind of from a very different cultural starting point as such. But because we've added them gradually over time, I think the business has kind of grown to be enriched by what they bring and different perspectives that they bring, rather than them having to kind of fit into, well, this is what Native Teams is. They've joined Native Teams, have become part of it, and Native Teams has kind of, I guess, reflect some of what they bring to the table as well.
What is the one question that you wish someone asked you about and they keep not asking it?
I think there's often some interesting questions that one could ask around drive and why founders do what they do, why people start businesses. I mean, I don't know that I necessarily have a particularly good answer on that side of things, but I think it's one of the questions that often gets overlooked. And I think lots of people that aren't founders themselves, aren't entrepreneurs, will assume it's because of money. That's why people start a business or whatever. But I've almost yet to meet a founder where money has been the main driver on that side. I think I perhaps know one or two, and they wouldn't necessarily be the people I would want to hang out with most of the time. There's normally some other reason for that. I mean, from my personal perspective, I guess it's, we all have a limited amount of time on the planet, and how can I make the biggest very small dent on the universe, whatever it might be. But I'm not creative. I can't write music, I can't draw art, but I have now got the experience and get the satisfaction from building a business and trying to fit all the different parts together to make that work.
And one last question. We are in Greece, as we talked about, great country for all sorts of bonding activities, also country of myths. And I want you to help us debunk some myths. So what is, you think, one myth about being a founder that you'd like to sort of challenge? Like conventional wisdom, but it might not be so wise as we think.
I hate to say it, but I think one of the myths that perhaps particularly more junior colleagues might assume is that one has all the answers. For sure, one doesn't have all the answers. I'd say that's definitely a myth that needs to be debunked.
And is there a myth about culture specifically, you think, that we could also, that is like widespread?
I don't know if it's a myth, but I would say it's something which some people aren't aware of. That good culture doesn't just happen. You have to be really intentional about it. You have to work really hard. If you're not careful, you get left with a vacuum, and then all sorts of, I guess, metaphorically as well as literally, all sorts of rubbish can end up in a vacuum. So you kind of really have to work to kind of to form the culture, to grow the culture, to nurture the culture, and not just kind of leave it to happen.
Well, we had an episode of EUROPEBUILDS where we looked a lot at how you can actually best quantify culture and have good metrics that you can then sort of act upon. So definitely touched upon that as well in the past.
I'd say one just on the metric side of things, I'd say one of the best because a lot of this is quite subjective. Is how do you kind of measure a friendship? Like I mentioned, that's kind of an important part of the culture we've looked to perpetuate. But actually, I think one of the best metrics you can look at is how many people leave the business, and we have like almost zero churn.
How many people do you have in the business today?
We have 300 or so, and we probably had about 5 people have left the business because they chose to leave the business over the last, year and a half or something along those lines. We've had a few more.
Great.
Yeah, but exactly. But people really, if they enjoy coming to work every day, then you're going to keep the people, and that's kind of one of the benefits of having a good culture as well, for sure.
Thank you so much for a lot of these insights, Jack Thorogood, founder and CEO of Native Teams, here with us today, live from the Tour Summit.
Been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of EUROPEBUILDS, where we show that the European ecosystem is no longer an underdog story.
If you liked our episode and want to hear more, follow EUROPEBUILDS on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Born's YouTube channel.